We know the new administration would grab every single gun you have if they thought they could get away with it. And we know that at the first possible opportunity, they will appoint judges who think the Second Amendment is an absolute joke. Most lower federal courts have similarly disrespected the right to bear arms. The reasons why are explained in our brief, which you can read on the Supreme Court's website, and in my book, The Second Amendment Works, which is free on Steve Felano's website, also on Amazon for almost giving it away prices. First, the gun control is simply a manifestation of the idiotic ideology of progressivism, which magically assumes that there is a government solution to every human problem and uses inert pieces of metal as scapegoats for the many failures of progressive policies and the violence that those failures have produced. Second, the ideology of progressivism has polluted the courts and led judges to smuggle in progressive ideas into their contrived and inscrutable formulas of balancing interests on gun laws that always somehow seems to lead to upholding any and all gun control legislation. This is all done, as we exposed in the current brief, in the face of all facts and logic and without the slightest hint of scientific justification for their conclusions. As my book illustrates, all the evidence is to the contrary, that the Second Amendment works. Finally, we are losing in the courts because even our own lawyers refuse to argue that gun laws must be evaluated only after recognizing the true purpose of the Second Amendment to deter government tyranny. Our own lawyers have refused to make that argument, and they are firmly convinced that they are simply adopting a clever strategy that will produce small incremental victories in the courts by not offending anyone's ideological proclivities. They are wrong, and the record proves it. Without making the sweeping government tyranny argument and attacking contrived and rigged balancing tests of progressive judges, with the resulting smokescreen laid down by a blizzard of statistical studies that focus on street crime and ignore the larger purposes of the right to bear arms, we are getting killed in the courts since Heller and McDonald, and unless we change our strategy fast and boldly, as we have done in this brief, we will only continue to lose. And if Joe Biden names just one judge to the Supreme Court, we may lose our right completely. Just remember that the minority in Heller would have held that there is no individual right to bear arms at all. Will any judge appointed by Biden be better than those 4 far-left liberal judges in the Heller minority? No. He or she will be worse, as Biden will name whomever his far-left controllers and handlers tell him to. In other words, Second Amendment lawyers need to go big or go home. So this case is for all the marbles. It is game, set, match. The right to bear arms is not just another important right. It is the most important right. It is the right that protects all the others. It is the reason America exists in the first place, since the Revolutionary War began in response to the British gun control mission at Lexington Green on April 19th, 1775. And as we reminded the Supreme Court on the issue of the right to carry in public, the Minutemen were not in their homes that day. I would go further and state that the right to bear arms is, with the possible exception of war and peace, the most important political issue at any time in any place. History shows that when people lack the right to defend themselves, they are often victimized, murdered, tyrannized, and enslaved. Throughout history, the hallmark of slavery has been that the slave could not legally bear arms. On the other hand, the early theorists of small r Republican government viewed the right to bear arms as the hallmark of a free citizen. That is why, while we hope to win this motion and win the subsequent appeal, we also wrote this brief for the public itself, to provide the education in the history and purpose of the Second Amendment that they are surely not getting in the schools controlled by left progressives. Failure is not an option. Unlike the other gun groups, we don't believe the Supreme Court is the last word about whether we have the natural right to liberty. We believe they are merely the first word. We don't want to be like Solzhenitsyn, and I'm paraphrasing from the Gulag Archipelago. When we were in the camps, we burned with the thought that just a little bit of resistance at the beginning of the Stalinist era, when they were rounding people up and sending them to Siberia, maybe we could have changed things. If, he wrote. But then he stopped himself and said, we just didn't love liberty enough. We didn't love liberty enough.